and welcome to leg 2 of the 1997 Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy. Coming up, we've got the exciting Cape Town restart. We look ahead at what's in store for the fleet as they cross the daunting Southern Ocean en route to Fremantle, Australia. Icy waters and freezing temperatures are guaranteed. We see how the crews combat the harshest of sailing conditions. Plus, of course, all the leg 2 action and drama, courtesy of the crews and their onboard cameras. At the end of a gruelling first leg, there was relief all round and the warmest of South African welcomes as the Whitbread fleet finally reached Cape Town.
Good having you in Cape Town. Really wonderful.
At last, a chance to regain the weight lost during 4 weeks at sea. But the 9 kilos lost by EF Language skipper Paul Kayard was a small price to pay for victory in his first ever leg as Whitbread skipper. The delight of the Swedish team was obvious as they hit the dock almost a day ahead of their nearest rival. The victory champagne never tasted so sweet. 20 hours later, Whitbread veteran Grant Dalton brought Merit Cup home to claim second place. A respectable position indeed, considering the extensive breakages suffered during the latter stages of the leg. 2 hours further back was Innovation Caverna, the long-time leader of the leg, eventually settling for third place.
And so, instead of opening up a 24-hour advantage after leg 1, EF Language leads Merit Cup by just 15 points, with Innovation Caverna in third place. For Silk Cut, the point system has been a blessing. A 41-point margin far easier to deal with than the 2-day deficit it might have been. For the rest of the fleet, it's a story of damage limitation. Toshiba, America's challenge and Swedish match will be needing to reverse the fleet order if they're going to close the gap. Whilst EF Education and Brunel Synergy are already looking for miracles.
Just days after arriving in Cape Town, syndicate politics came to the fore, and the first casualty was the biggest name of all.
It was a difficult month with being in the same position and not being able to catch up for 3 or 4 weeks. I think the crew came through it just fine. I think I came through it just fine. But the problems that were apparent before the start of the race were very much more apparent during the race, in the boat preparation, in electronic equipment that wasn't working because it had never been tried, in sails that were falling apart. I haven't been hired to fly around in the middle of the course. There's really no point in me being there to be sailing along where we've been.
Amid suggestions of a mutiny against Dixon, Britain's Paul Stambridge was promoted to skipper. But if Toshiba had problems, they were nothing compared to those facing another American entry, as we were about to discover.
It has been announced by Neil Barth, syndicate chairman, that America's challenge must reluctantly withdraw from the Whitbread race due to unforeseen circumstances involving a third party in Mexico, which have in the past month undermined the ongoing financial viability of the campaign as it was structured.
It's not clear what those circumstances might have been, but one thing was for sure, there were now only 2 American boats left in the race.
I am a professional yachtsman. I entered this race with the view of winning the race, not to compete just to sail around the track. If we do not have the budget to compete with the other boats, I am not continuing with the race.
Welcome to Cape Town City.
During the early part of the week, the most important event on the calendar was sightseeing, as all the syndicates took advantage of their final downtime before the start to enjoy life in Cape Town and its surrounds. South Africa's sporting isolation, due to many years of apartheid, has left them desperate to be accepted back into the sporting fold. They hunger to show they are ready to host major events, even ones that come attached with a white elitist label. And so a large number of tours are laid on for the teams.
Interesting.
Interesting maybe. However, most of the crews passed up the chance to sample life in the township. But if townships were out, Cape Point and the nearby beaches were most definitely in. But when it came to relaxation, most of the crews preferred to get out there and do something. A As the week continued, the pace grew even more frenetic, and a Southern Ocean fever swept through the fleet with a wave of engagements and celebrations as the crews prepared mentally to say goodbye. But amid the haircuts, photo calls and laughter, a more serious note began to be heard. New crew members were beginning to arrive. On EF Education, Joan Touchette, while strategist Dee Smith became part of the Chessie racing team. Everyone was maximising their numbers for the Southern Ocean.
Well, we identified pretty early on in the leg that we were just down on horsepower on the boat. We just didn't have enough horsepower to keep driving the boat 24 hours a day, particularly when the conditions got a little tough, just physically. And so that's a straight reflection on the decision to now run with 12.
Dalton's extra man was Beach Bull, who had jumped ship from America's Challenge, and other crew from that syndicate were scrambling for the extra places on offer. There was no place for Skipper Field, but at the last possible moment, Matt Humphreys grabbed a place on Swedish Match. Those who didn't find a berth, left high, dry and broke by the collapse, had to be repatriated by the Whitbread race organisers. And the boat itself lay stripped bare in the Royal Cape Yacht Club. For America's Challenge, it was last orders at the Tavern of the Seas.
So as the boys on board America's Challenge head home, the rest of the crews are getting ready for leg 2, Cape Town to Fremantle, 4,600 miles across the Southern Ocean. In a few days, the boats will be underway and we'll be seeing the type of sailing that underscores the Whitbread race. 2.5 weeks at sea in the world's most arduous ocean conditions, the crews taking big risks to achieve breakneck speeds. The Southern Ocean is the only place where the huge low-pressure systems constantly circle the globe, creating wind and waves that roll along uninterrupted for thousands of miles.
I think everybody gets really, really scared.
It is true. We can lose our life.
You get a little apprehensive sometimes.
It can be scary. It can scare the living daylights out of you. But maybe that's why we do it.
The Southern Ocean is where beauty and danger ride hand in hand. However striking, the icebergs can be a threat. If they're large enough to be spotted on the radar, it's not a problem. But it's the small growlers which peak just above the surface, which can hole a boat. As the boats pick up snow and ice on the rigging, equipment can break as deck gear freezes up and can't be operated properly. 4 Whitbread sailors have died in the Southern Ocean, and it was here in the last Whitbread race that the British boat Dolphin and Youth suffered a broken rudder, which after badly cracking, was on the verge of falling off. And Brooksfield suffered a large hole in her hull, resulting in more than 3 tons of icy water on board. It's not all fun out there.
So, with the first stopover drawing to a close, the crew's preparing to leave the beautiful sights of Cape Town behind them. And as departure day dawns, the team's happy once again to be on their way.
When the America's Challenge withdrew, we thought that was it, and most of the guys just went home, and you know, I wasn't too keen to go back to an English winter, so I'm very pleased to have been able to have an opportunity to sail with the Swedish Match. It's a good boat to be on, I think, and it's a very well organised boat, and you know, they had a hard leg like us in the last one, and they are looking forward to having a good run in this next leg.
As the crews clamber aboard to complete their final preparations, Matt Humphreys not the only new face helping out on deck.
I hope I bring a certain amount of seamanship to the team, to being able to deal with situations in heavy airs or in preventing things from getting out of hand, and hopefully, you know, helping to solve things when they do go wrong.
With last-minute checks frantically being carried out on board each boat, time was running out.
The sun's up, we're expecting some nice breeze to get away with at the start, so everything should be fine, and we obviously had a hectic couple of weeks. here in Cape Town, but we're up to it and everything's done, so ready to race.
So as the band began to play, there was only time left to say goodbye to those being left on dry land. And as the boats pulled out of the dockside, the Cape Town crowds were there to wave them farewell as they prepare to spend at least the next 2.5 weeks at sea.
Light, patchy winds, brilliant sunshine, table mounting the spectacular backdrop for the start of the second leg of the Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy. Two of the real front runners there, and there's Toshiba. Paul Stambridge just taken over from Chris Dixon as skipper. And there's the girls, EF Education. Chessie Racing, fifth on the first leg, boats preparing to start. Seconds away now from the start as they line up. And that's the start now. They've got 6 miles of short course racing, round 3 buoys before they set off on their own course towards Fremantle. Close to camera, Paul Cayard, EF, Language. Toshiba, they're 2 boats round the back now. They've got problems, having to dive behind the fleet. Left of the picture, good start for Swedish Match, the blue boat there. Far side, I can just make out Merit Cup. Probably the best start there, and into the middle of the patch, Chessie Racing. Light winds, but crew working hard. On board there, Ross McDonald steering Toshiba. There's the skipper with the beard, Paul Stambridge. Very much of a team player, letting the short course expert, the Olympic sailor, steer in these early minutes of the race. Good panoramic view down there. Closest to us is Laurie Smith. We're now on board with Merrick Cup and Grant Dalton. He's got clear air there. Good position to be in. Crew staying still, so vital not to move in these early moments. Light winds, you move, you slow down. Close in there on Swedish Match. Skipper Gunnar Krantz out to prove a point. Finished 8th in the last leg. Big budget, a lot of pressure on him. At the moment, going well. Close to camera, Brunel Sanergy, but back down there, the white spinnaker of Swedish Match. On board now, Toshiba. Close to camera, skipper Paul Stambridge as they jibe. Ross McDonald still at the helm. Be interesting, very much a team game on Toshiba. Stambridge playing on the strengths of the other crew members, obviously prepared to do whatever's necessary himself. Merit Cup approaching the first mark, looked to be in a good position. Clear air, there is Merit Cup going from left to right. Looked to be at first at the moment, but I saw Laurie Smith and the British boat go out left, so that's going to be interesting. Here are the British team, they've got good breeze as they approach the first mark in first position. Good performance there. Well, the boats really are very tightly packed together as they pour down towards this first mark, but Laurie Smith and the British team are out in front. They've established a good lead, and whilst that might not seem terribly significant on their way to Fremantle, psychologically it does matter. Merit Cup now, coming in second position. They finished second in the first leg. They'd be happy to stay there. Grant Dalton said you've got to be in the top 3 of every leg in this race to win it. Blue boat, Swedish Match, Gunnar Krantz. Very satisfied to be coming in third. As leg 1 winner, EF Language and Paul Cayard squeezes through just in front of Brunel Sanergy, the Dutch boat. Dutch boat, so many problems on that first leg. First they hit a whale, then they had mast problems, and then they came in last position. So at last a few smiles on board that boat. New navigator, Stuart Quarrier's joined them, but I guess they made it all by themselves down to that first mark. Toshiba squeezing inside there on Brunel Sanergy. And now back, lead boat. Laurie Smith, familiar, casual pose, betrays a fierce competitor in that boat. Certainly looking more relaxed than they did on the press conference at the end of leg 1. British team desperate to do well on this second leg. Close to Swedish Match. Great view that, isn't it, of the thoroughbred racing machines these Whitbread 60s are. Tweaking the boat as it goes upwind in these light conditions. Back to Ross McDonald on Toshiba. Chatting his way up the leg, talking to the crew. You can see Swedish Match over there, they're in second. Light conditions, but massive horsepower in these boats, meaning that they're leaning over it even in this sort of wind. Now that water pouring out, they've got water ballast in these boats, and that means they've got enough. It's full up. So, early soaking for the crew there as we close in on EF Language. Paul Cayard, winner of leg 1 at the helm, confidently steering his way upwind, chasing Brunel Sonergy, looking to have better boat speed already. Another good performer from the first leg there, Innovation Caverna. And second in the first leg, Grant Dalton, Merritt Cup, we're on board with him again. Look at him delicately squeezing the boat upwind there, keeping the power on, keeping the momentum, and keeping out of trouble. A lot of spectator boats out here. So, the fleet now head off towards Fremantle. There'll be one boat that's very pleased with the start. Laurie Smith and Gordon Maguire at the helm, as the British boat leads the Whitbread fleet on the way to Fremantle.
Big winds and huge surfing waves will always be the hallmark of this leg 2 from Cape Town to Fremantle. In the eyes of the world, every one of the 4,600 miles is sailed against icebergs and snow, as the crews fight off frostbite and take freezing blasts of water full in the face every few seconds. Unless the big conditions damage or even sink a boat in the lower latitudes, this leg is more likely to be won in the light winds, at the beginning or at the end.
Basically, to get down there, we've got to cross high pressure out of Cape Town. You run along, break a few things, you know, and dodge a few whales or whatever, and then you've got to cross high pressure again in the Indian Ocean to get back up again.
The first leg was pretty scary for navigators. This one should be pretty scary for those on deck, basically. Hopefully I'll be hiding downstairs with a cup of coffee and they'll be scaring themselves silly on deck.
There'll be probably two breaks in the leg, and you've got to be with them, wherever the heck they happen to be. This isn't a classic Southern Ocean leg. It's late in spring now. You're only going to, I don't know, 48 or something like that. I think the Great Circle's way above that. So we don't really view it as a, you know, it's not going to be shorts and T-shirts, but it's not full Southern Ocean, unless you get a bad depression down there. If it was, it's a frightening place to sail.
Frightening perhaps, but for those who get through in one piece, the last few days into Fremantle will be a final tactical test.
Always you've got to do the last bit right. You can swap lead, first, second, third places. You can swap it half a dozen times through the leg. You just got to get the last 200 miles right. If you get that right, you get ahead of the guy, and the race finishes before he can pass you again.
If you look at 89, the race was won there. Steinlager got through, having been miles behind the Southern Ocean. You've got to be there when the light air comes coming into Perth, because there's a big weather break there.
Swift off the line and leading the charge out of Cape Town, it was a momentous start for Silk Cut. But the glory was short-lived. Within hours, Laurie Smith had wilted in the dying wind, plummeting to 5th place. A gutsy move saw Swedish Match take up the running. Finding the fast lane, it barged to the front.
We are actually in the lead at the moment, and the reason for that is that we acted totally against what we said what we should do. Stick with the fleet is what we said, and here we are. We took off on a little flyer on our own, the only boat that took off offshore, away from land, and that was a big advantage for us. So we sailed into more breeze, and what we can see behind us, about 8 miles, the others are in very light breeze, tacking out to get to the breeze as well. So at the moment, it's very good. Just lack of time in the boat.
Out of Table Bay, and most of the boats chased Laurie Smith down the coast, hugging close inshore. Only Swedish Match broke away, sniffing out wind further out to sea. By midnight, the Swedes were revelling in a 35-mile lead, while behind, their rivals were going nowhere fast.
We were careful not to come too close to the shore. All indications we had before the race was that to stay outside 2-mile line away from the shore, especially at Signal Hill, and we'd be fine. It was a bit scary to be the only boat doing that. We said before the start that now we're going to stick with the fleet and not doing anything crazy on our own. But the first thing we did was to take off on our own. We had so many things indicating that the breeze was offshore, and a major decision factor was the smoke from a big ship that passed by, a freighter that passed by. We said, there, it is there, let's go and get it.
While Swedish Match had it, the rest did not. Unpredictable wind crossed the course and the fleet split, searching for breeze and a ride down south. EF Language, furthest east, was separated more than 100 miles across the course from the boats in the west. For all the crews, these were anxious moments, impatient to get south and onto the hard stuff. On board, the Leg 1 winners were looking good for now. In second, navigator Mark Rudiger was hoping the breeze would continue to blow his way. Being out east was starting to look precarious. Off the pace was Merrick Cup in a lowly 5th place, desperate to push south and grind in some miles.
We've been at sea now 2 days since the start, but the interesting thing is that after a dismal start, we managed to get EF out in the east, Caverna out in the west, and we've slotted right down the middle. Everybody's travelling harder south, so we've drawn a line through here based on our course, and that would put EF only 5 miles in front of us, Caverna about the same, and us and Silk Cup pretty similar.
Meanwhile, struggling to hold on to 4th place, Laurie Smith, desperately seeking any advantage with only a few miles separating much of the fleet.
Second day out, and we're not in good shape here. Battling to get south. The wind's in the south, but the wind direction's not letting us get there, so it's a bit of a struggle. Swedish match is long gone. We're lying 4th at the moment behind Swedish match EF and Chessie Racing. Merrick's just back there. Chessie Racing's just up there. But no one's going anywhere fast. The only good news today is it's Jan's 30th birthday. And he's still doing the cooking, so he doesn't get that many privileges.
Day 4 and EF Language has crashed badly. Now in 6th, it was time for reflection.
It was a good start for us out of Cape Town. We held 2nd place for the first 36 hours of the race. But then in the second night, we encountered a squall and got pushed too far to the east. And all day yesterday we had very light winds, so it's kind of tough to take, but I guess some of our competitors had the same feeling on the first leg, so what goes around comes around.
Leading the bunch out of Cape Town, EF Language held a tenuous 2nd place, crisscrossing the course in search of wind. A punt east proved expensive. Hit by a squall and then pushed into a hole, it was left standing. Inside, the fleet just sailed away. A disastrous start for Kayard. EF's loss was Caverna's gain. Now in 2nd place, furthest west and in top gear. There was even time for a spot of nature watching. Also enjoying the scenery, Toshiba, now in 3rd.
This is the early stages of day 4. It's been a good 12 hours. We've put a few miles on Silk Cut and Merrick Cut, which are just down to the leeward of us. We're really happy how we're going.
Happy too were Brunel Sanergy. New mast, new navigator and new position. Up in the running for the first time in the race. However, on Silk Cut, Laurie Smith was putting a brave face on a bad position. The Southern Ocean right now a far cry from how he likes to remember it.
It's not really Southern Ocean weather, it's clear skies. The guys got the shirts off and we're at 41 south. Whereas normally when you get down to this latitude it's a lot colder and a lot windier. And there you go, otherwise things are good. I had another birthday today, Gordon, lying about his age, says he's 36, but I think he's about 40 actually.
With Swedish match long gone, Innovation Caverna was next to make a move. Investing to the west to get south, Knut Frostad and his crew lost out short term, but eventually streamed past. Toshiba followed. Clear of the fleet and in the top 3, an encouraging start for new skipper Paul Stanbridge. On board Toshiba, spirits were high.
This is Nick Maloney on air wheel. This is steering table problems again. Had a few on the first leg, broke a couple of tables in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning, so we just got a bit chafe on them again. It's a bit unfortunate, we thought we might have got rid of that problem, but so we've got some stuff with cover and a bit of millionaire's tape on it. Hopefully that'll do the trick.
Slow, nearly a quarter of the leg gone and Swedish match out ahead and into strong winds. It's a lead barring breakdown that could easily see them into Fremantle first in 10 days' time. Behind, a big gap already down to 9th. of South Africa and with Swedish match long gone, the boats that drove south made the gains. First Caverna and then Toshiba. They went south and found more breeze rather than being tempted into sailing the shorter Great Circle course further north. The leading three boats were in much more wind, including Caverna. Behind them in third, Toshiba skipper Paul Stambridge was happy.
Swedish match has got away, very good luck to them. That was on a tactical manoeuvre 1 hour after the start. Caverna got away yesterday, 60 miles ahead of us. We're in a solid third, which we're very happy with, I must admit. If we can maintain that, we'll be very happy.
Merritt Cup was in the winds and cold too, but Dalton was paying the price of being too far north and not cutting south.
We're really now into the Southern Ocean for the first time. The light winds have now gone and they're replaced by a stiff southerly breeze bringing with it very cold wind, which has put us into our survival suits and getting very, very wet on deck. We feel a real frustration on board at what has been our inability to get the boat into the front pack. And now with the first three boats well in front, there is very little chance we'll be able to do that. And it's not that easy back here. It's not that we're with slow boats. We've got EF and Silk Cut, so getting a good performance now on this leg is going to be exceptionally difficult for us.
The problem was the uncharacteristic Southern Ocean weather, which was created by a high-pressure system which overtook the fleet last weekend. It was bringing light airs to the boats in the north and threatening to engulf the whole fleet. Navigators were busy tracking it and trying to make sure that they could stay as far away from it as possible.
On board EF Education, at the top of the mast here. On days like today, it's one of the best places to be. Some other days, it's the worst place to be. The movement up here is untold more than the movement down on the boat. So it wriggles around a lot. You have to hold on pretty tight. But as you can see, today's not one of those days.
This one we've got for breakfast. Chocolate mousse. Watch Captain Leah Newbold never want to let a lack of wind get her down, especially when there's a bowl of chocolate mousse to be licked clean. Meanwhile, on the boys' boat, EF Language, it was a similar story. The still waters and flapping sail tells the tale. They were going nowhere fast.
This is the area that Mark Rudiger and myself spend most of our time at. One of our activities that we do every 6 hours is we plot the positions of our competitors. This might look like a bit of a mess to you, but actually all the positions are color-coded, and what's important to us is to know the range and bearing to each of our competitors. Tactically, we need to know that, and also from the advancement of their positions, we can tell what type of winds they've had, which helps us in our weather analysis. Another type of tool we use is the weather facts. They come about 4 times a day. This is the 1800 Zulu surface analysis from Friday the 14th, and the very interesting feature here is this incredibly large high-pressure system which is blocking the entire Southern Ocean from Africa to Antarctica. Now everybody's getting ready for Saturday night, having some fun, so have some fun for us and eat a little bit of cheesecake and a nice steak for us. Thanks very much. Signing off from the EF Language.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
No cheesecake or birthday cake on board Chessie Racing, despite the celebrations for navigator Juan Villa's 36th birthday. Earlier in the week, things had been somewhat more serious when Chessie damaged its keel following a collision with an unknown object. A diver was dispatched into the icy water to assess the damage, but the keel was deemed fit to proceed. At the front of the fleet, Swedish Match was pressing home its advantage as it became the first boat to hit the low pressure and some genuine Southern Ocean conditions. On board, the mood was very positive, as the crew relished sailing in the 50-knot winds, despite the wet and the cold. But as most of the fleet were discovering, pushing the new breed of Whitbread 60s to the limit came at a price.
We are going to execute a $2,700 repair. We had a fitting in the boom bank has broken. A pin that goes straight through the boom has sheared off, and Timmy and Earl Williams, our technicians on board, will execute this repair, and they smile when they spend this money. I hate that.
Cutting a very expensive piece of equipment which the skipper's crying about up there, holding onto the sheet. But anyway, here we go.
It's also titanium, so it's titanium, so it's very hard to cut. As you'll see, I'm having a lot of difficulty, and we should get there by tomorrow morning sometime. Bring yours in. Can you feel it? Success!
Wear and tear was a familiar story throughout the fleet this week.
We were last reaching on starboard, about 25 knots of breeze. We ripped this off, pad-eye, clean out the deck and the deck with it. Left quite a nasty hole here, which was taking in quite a lot of water because the rail was underwater, so we had to fix this in quite a hurry. So this bit of plastic here was one of your bowls, Tim, one of your breakfast bowls. Because the sheet was pulling in this direction, we had a reef in the main at the time. Thing shot up here, I went through the mainsail, so we got a hole in the mainsail that we got to fix as well.
And having described the incident, it was Jason Carrington himself who was sent up the mast to repair the damage. With the leaders potentially out of touch, the battle for 4th place was still a close-run thing. At one point, the British boat was down to 8th place, but once again, a move south proved the key. Laurie Smith took a dive and it paid. By Monday, he was up from his embarrassing 8th to 5th and in a position to fight for 4th. Merritt, meanwhile, had taken a beating up north and was down to 8th. By early this week, the boats that had made it south were reaping the rewards. Amongst them, Leg 1 winner Paul Kayard and EF Language were now up to speed. Even 9th place Brunel Sanergy were experiencing some true Southern Ocean conditions.
But they were soon all up to speed again and going faster than the leaders. The 3 leaders would have seen this on the sked and went south to protect their position. Even Swedish Match made a small detour south, although her lead was so big that a first into Fremantle is looking like a certainty unless they suffer serious damage.
So on day 9, Swedish Match still enjoying a 300-mile lead, with only 200 miles separating 2nd and 3rd placed Innovation Caverna and Toshiba. The real battle's going on in the middle of the fleet, with only 20 miles separating EF Language and the British boat. Chessie Racing following close behind in 6th, while EF Education are at their highest placing yet at 7th. Grant Dalton will be sorely disappointed with 8th, while Brunel Sanergy once again bring up the rear. Back out on the racecourse, Swedish Match flew past the Kerguelen Islands with a 300-mile lead, chased by Caverna and Toshiba battling for 2nd. Behind, the fight is on for the middle order. But in the heavy seas and winds of the Southern Ocean, relentlessly pushing your boat at maximum speed comes at a price.
Hi, I'm Nick Watts aboard Innovation Caverna for Snooze Productions. It's day 14, Friday the 22nd, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and about 6 hours ago we jibed the boat onto Port Jibe to make our final approach to Fremantle. We've nicknamed the boat the Memphis Belle at the moment because we're basically struggling not to keep it together, but we've had a few minor breakdowns that are very irritating, and at times haven't been able to push the boat as hard as we'd like. We've basically decided that the Swedish Match is beyond catching. They've got a very good lead on us and have sailed particularly well. It's just starting to rain here as we go into another squall in the Southern Ocean, and the breeze is increasing even as I speak, and I think I'm going to have to go because I'm actually meant to be sailing.
It was definitely a case of all hands on deck on board the Norwegian boat as they struggled to hold things together on their roller coaster ride in 60-knot gusts of wind. Despite the frenzy of activity, Snooze Productions continued to film the action, affording us a taste of how it feels to ride a Southern Ocean wave.
As you might see around the boat, it's been a bit of a ongoing refit on board. We had a bit of a shit fire the last days, with starting up 2 days ago in the morning where we hit something hard, most likely a whale, and crashed some of our ring frames in the bow. Took about 20 hours to fix that, and a big wave washed over the boat, wiped the helmsman down off, and we broke the steering wheel of the steering pedestal. Apart from that, we've been sailing for 5 days with all the buttons in the main broken, and this morning we took down the main, and in 1 hour and 40 minutes we replaced all the buttons in the main, as well as repaired 2 holes in the main which came during some heavy air the last 3 days.
Still in second place, despite the damage and Toshiba's move south, Frostad as ever was looking forward rather than back.
Toshiba's obviously done a better route than us around Kirkland Island. I don't think she has a big advantage. We don't look back really, we look concentrated about ourselves here, and then we'll be what it'll be.
Well, definitely not looking back, Swedish match. Clean away, all eyes on Fremantle and enjoying their days at the office.
After a hard day at work, I'm changing from my working clothes to the nightgown. A couple of hours to sleep. We're going like a Boeing, crashing around in 20 knots, top speed 28. Finally, all the young puppies on board the boat now realize what the Whitbread 60 is, and what the W stands for is wet. Very, very wet.
For the conditions right now. Oh, that's very nice. Even smoking, it's nice and wet and bloody cold in here. Not as nice as in the drying locker where Gora is in.
Also far from dry land, the British boys revelling in the high winds after a smart move to the south. Not only did they leap up to 5th, but they clocked the fastest 24-hour run to date, 431 miles. Only 3 miles off the world record and chasing hard for EF Language's 4th. Trying their best, if only artistically, Merit Cup found themselves back in 7th, a disaster for the Leg 1 runners-up.
The situation here is not particularly good. We've been hung out in the north, not as much breeze with the weather of Kerguelen, and we've just jibed on to starboard and said, okay, that's it. We stay in the north, we're not doing very well now, we're going to be absolute history for this leg. So we're going to take a heavy loss here to get ourselves back into the south, because in 5 or 6 days past Kerguelen there's a lot more breeze, and it's in the south. So it's one of those ones, sometimes you've got to do it. It's not happy. Everybody, the mood around here is very sombre at the moment, having had to do this. We'll pass behind, I think, just about every boat in the fleet.
Out of contention for once, Dalton had time to reflect on the rationale for staying north in the first place.
A wind shift came through about 4 or 5 days ago, and all the boats behind us at that stage were in 4th position. Right, we were becalmed, all got their bows down and got south. They got down round underneath us before the shift got to us. Absolutely nothing we could do about it. No, we're not happy about it at all. The guys are fine, but it'll just made our life that much harder.
Well, life doesn't come much tougher than on Brunel's Synergy. After a dismal first leg, the Dutchmen find themselves at the back of the fleet once again, and they're looking pretty unhappy about it. 1,300 miles to Frio, and Swedish Match leads by over 300 miles. The battle for second sees Toshiba closing in fast on Caverna. EF Language has an 80-mile jump on Silk Cut, but the British boys are gaining. Little to be said about Merit Cup, now close to 900 miles off the pace. And no surprises to see EF Education and Brunel Synergy trailing at the back. Up at the front of the fleet, the long-time leader, Swedish Match, was maintaining a relentless pace and closing in fast on the finish line. For all the Whitbread experience on board, few of the crew members had witnessed such a brutal onslaught in the Southern Ocean. Many of the Whitbread sailors had experienced heavy conditions in the past, but just for 2 or 3 days at a time. It was the sustained intensity of this Southern Ocean leg which had left the Swedish Match crew totally exhausted, but very happy to be within sight of the winning post.
Hard to believe that for the last 2.5 weeks this crew have been living in those sort of conditions, yet looking as composed as they do. They've survived enormous weather, ridiculous seas and huge winds. Look at Bow now, Runs up. Sinclair runs up.
Such a different welcome to that at Cape Town, and somber race. That's the finish!
Everything was just happened the right way. It was just a total flow, as you say. Sometimes you have a flow, and we had a flow, I can tell you.
Key components was to keep the boat together, don't break anything serious, keep pushing hard, accelerate and brake at the same time. The team spirit, everything, everybody's been fighting so hard all the way, and just driving the boats and ourselves to the limit.
The Caverna campaign has always been understated. Quiet determination from a young and motivated team. But after 2 legs, they lead the race, the only team to have filed 2 top 3 finishes as they cruised into Fremantle in 2nd place. The leg, however, was not without its difficulties. And for Knut Frostad, some new encounters.
It was more wind than I've ever been in on this leg. I mean, it was very hard. It never let go. It was just non-stop every day for days and days and days. It was non-stop. We're leading the Whitbread now, and we just came in here 2nd to Fremantle, and 7 legs to go, but we take it leg by leg and see.
A top 3 position was always what Toshiba's new skipper Paul Stambridge was aiming for. Promoted to replace Chris Dixon, it was a new responsibility for a sailor who has 4 Whitbread races behind him. It was a proud moment. Congratulations from the crew showed renewed high morale aboard the pre-race favourite. Stambridge had brought them all through, and in good order too.
Yeah, obviously very happy. Yeah, when I took over Toshiba, I said I'd like to get her on the podium for the next leg, and that's what we did, so I'm very happy, yeah. We broke some gear, as did every other boat. If you didn't have that, it would be boring, and you wouldn't be trying very hard. So, yeah, we had our moments, but it went smoothly enough, yeah. We didn't kill anyone, so...
If the top 3 boats had been sailing their own race for the last week, then Laurie Smith and Paul Cayard were going head-to-head on leg 2 in an all-out battle for 4th place. After 2 weeks, the Southern Ocean racetrack was becoming as dangerous and demanding as it always had threatened. Damage was now a very real issue, with EF Language, the Leg 1 winner, breaking more than most, including their spinnaker pole, which would prove to be a crucial loss. And as the weather continued to batter EF, the crew's spirits also fell, as they saw Laurie Smith, previously behind them, reel in their injured and slowing boat. This was the British skipper at his merciless best. On November the 20th, his crew destroyed the Monohull World Speed Record, and a day later, they passed EF as Smith continued at a frenetic pace towards Fremantle. For Silk Cart, it had been a strange leg. They'd led out of Cape Town at the start, only to then slip to 8th within a week. To the onlooker, leg 2 at this stage seemed over for the British crew, but Laurie Smith had gambled with a change of direction and had withstood short-term losses in time and position in order to gain in the run to Fremantle. By mid-leg, he said he was aiming for 4th. In overhauling Paul Cayard and EF with a week to the finish, his earlier gamble had paid off. Along the way, he set a new world speed record for a monohull boat, covering an incredible 449 miles in a 24-hour run. At the finish, it was time to collect.
Right, if we win the next leg, then we'll be right there, even if Caverna comes 2nd. So that's what we've got to do. We're right there, but so is the rest of the fleet, really. You know, this leg has just brought everyone back together.
So Smith has made his mark on leg 2, and as the press opened their notebooks, all the talk was of a record which had been set in conditions that the crew won't forget in a hurry.
I was getting nervous as we started going faster through the water, covering more and more miles during the course of the day. You do feel small.
Kind of nerve-wracking at times, especially when it was black. We had 4 or 5 nights without any moonlight and stars, so you're just sailing along in blackness.
It's darker than a dark thing, just black. You can't see the hand in front of your face.
I started planning my resignation letter. I thought, I'm just not enjoying this.
A huge wall of water comes rushing back down the deck, and I just thought, well, I won't use the exact words what I thought, but I thought, Christ, we're in for a ride here.
You could argue that EF Language had the roughest ride of all. Not only did they come into Fremantle with a patched-up boat, they had seen themselves overhauled by Silk Cut. For Kayard, another new experience. 5th instead of 1st, but still they're 2nd overall after 2 legs. The welcoming party was out in force to brush away the blues of a disappointing result for a syndicate with the greatest expectations.
Hey! Like right there, huh? How y'all doing?
And like the British before them, memories of a Southern Ocean sleigh ride.
I come from a world where things are won and lost by inches and seconds. I've won 5 America's Cup races by 1 second. And in those kind of races, you don't give an inch, ever. Here, there's a time where it's smart money to just slow down, throttle back into 3rd gear and go to 85%. That's smart money over the long haul. And personally, Paul Kayard doesn't really know how to downshift. And I had to learn that, and I learned it the hard way. Maybe the hard way, not too hard. Nobody really got hurt, and we still have our mast up, but cost us 1 position.
So Kayard still acquainting himself with the Whitbread. The opposition better hope he's a slow learner.
Of the 4 boats still out on the course, Chessie Racing will be the next to reach Fremantle, a comfortable 6th ahead of Merritt Cup and Grant Dalton. Although Merritt had pulled ahead of EF Education, a source of some comfort for crewman Jared Henderson, whose fiancée Karen McMaster sails on the women's boat, the reality of their position in terms of the overall race was becoming all too clear to their skipper.
It's the end of day 13 and we're about 1,600 miles now from Fremantle. There's 2 behind us, the rest are long gone, and we're pretty well resigned to the fact that at best we're going to be 7th unless we have a problem, then it could even get worse. It's been a punishing leg for us, not one that we will care to remember with fond memories in the legs to come, and we know basically we must improve. We can withstand this 7th that we will probably get to go with our 2nd, but we cannot withstand another one if we want to win the round the world race.
While Merritt were trying to hold on to 7th, EF Education were trying to hold on to their sails. Hit by a heavy wave as they prepared to jibe, their boat broached and 2/3 of their sail inventory was dumped into the ocean. Leah Newbold was dispatched with a halyard to retrieve them, and eventually the sodden sail bags were winched on board. Another exhausting test of teamwork for Christine Guillau's crew, but one which had little lasting damage on their morale. With another last place on the cards, it's unlikely the same was true of Hans Bouchot's crew aboard Brunel Synergy. No unlucky collisions with whales this time, no excuses, and no real hope of an improvement in their performance. Chessie Racing had hit a whale earlier in the leg and damaged her keel as a result. Some 16 hours behind EF Language coming into Fremantle and 7th overall after 2 legs, Chessie had not lacked boat speed, only Southern Ocean experience. The first to step ashore ahead of skipper Mark Fisher was Rick Depp, himself no stranger to the Southern Ocean, but about to meet his baby daughter Isabel for the first time.
It's your sister.
The water is so cold that when it hits, it makes your teeth hurt. But you're sweating. You know, underneath your foul weather gear, you're sweating because you're working so hard. So it's a pretty dynamic place. It's exciting, and it's a great fun place to sail.
Back out at sea, there was no relief for Grant Dalton, desperate to end his Leg 2 nightmare. Even experienced navigator Mike Quilter could see no way through this huge high that had surrounded them. Some 100 miles behind, there was another day at the office too for the women aboard EF Education, barring any domestic accidents over breakfast.
Try not to spill it on yourself.
While new girl Emma Westmacott and her colleagues enjoyed their rehydrated scrambled egg, work continued on deck, and above it for bowman Lisa Charles.
Lisa, what did you just do?
Just did a rig check. It's a pretty good day for it. Not too rough out here today, and we're expecting some pretty gnarly weather, so thought we just have a little look at how things are holding up on the rig.
The gnarly weather duly arrived. Exhilarating for all on board, but the ride wasn't to last. As the winds died on their approach to Fremantle, the last 3 boats resigned themselves to more time at sea. Brunel Synergy staging a late swoop to close within 25 miles of EF Education. Little doubt about the pecking order at the top of the fleet, though. After 2 top 3 finishes, Knut Frostad's Innovation Caverna lead the field from EF Language. Silk Cut in third, heading a group of 3 boats. Behind them, Chessie Racing have a lot to do, as have EF Education and Brunel Synergy, well adrift of the fleet in 8th and 9th, irrespective of their positions coming into Fremantle. So this year's Whitbread Round the World race is starting to take shape, and the pressure continues to mount as the fleet prepares for leg 3 and the relatively short hop from Fremantle to Sydney. But leg 2 belongs to Swedish Match, who led from the start and are now firmly back in the running.